All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining my webinar. My name is Brandon Campbell. I am a director on the business development team at Ephesoft. Over the next half hour, I plan to cover content capture for RPA. I'd like to review how Ephesoft handles unstructured content for true intelligent capture. I'm going to dig into Ephesoft's activities in UiPath a bit and the web services that power them. And then I'm going to end with a live demonstration of an end-to-end process with document capture fed task automation through configuration of UiPath. Just a quick reminder here, please ask your questions in the Q&A window. My colleague Scott King is monitoring chat and he'll respond to your questions in real time. We'll also happily follow up with you if you need more details than what we can provide on the chat medium. So for everyone that just attended UiPath Forward, or for anyone who might not have, you probably noticed all of the buzz around AI-powered capture. For me personally, it was difficult to turn around without running into a vendor that was claiming a hot new release of data intelligence for documents. And if you were like me, you were probably a little skeptical and couldn't help but think about all of the recent coverage of overhyped and underperforming machine learning-based applications in the RPA space specifically. The Everest Group has coined this burgeoning market category of capture vendors as intelligent document processing. And it is forecasted that this market is going to grow by 80 to 90% over the next 2 years. So given this purported future, it's no wonder why every single RPA company and document-minded tech company out there are dipping their toes into the capture ocean. So there is some risk to these newly released products, many of which seem to be an alpha version of the product rather than a production-ready application. And if I hear one more salesperson claim that their AI-powered tool can solve every document data problem and make me coffee in the morning, my head's probably going to explode. So as we've seen from the major announcements at UiPath, which are very similar to the releases and the announcements made by many other major RPA players, one aspect of process automation is just incredibly clear. Document intelligence is critical to the success of any of these implementations. In fact, it's been cited that at least 60%, and that's a really big number, 60% of all business processes involve documents at some portion of their workflow. So given that, along with that prediction made by Everest Group, which I mentioned earlier, I repeat, it's not surprising at all that so many RPA vendors and new startups are trying to wrap their hands around content capture. So with the aim of adding document intelligence to robotic workflows, most RPA systems have begun to offer capture tools out of the box. Just earlier this year, Gartner claimed that capture is tangential to the core of RPA, and suddenly OCR, or the conversion of image-only file to text searchable documents, became sexy again. And OCR had not been sexy since like 1980, I believe, but a capture tool that does more with documents than simply render them text searchable or look for fields of information based on zonal regions of a page, they're going to fall short of most enterprise capture needs. And the goal of RPA is to be able to extend automation to the enterprise. So if you want your bot to become truly document aware, you're really going to need to look for a company that specializes on intelligent capture and is agnostic to the BPA or the RPM or the RPA or BPM tool that is running behind the scenes. So as one of the top RPA analysts in the field has said, intelligence document processing offers tremendous opportunity in the automation space, but it's incredibly important to look for solutions and vendors that deliver actual results, not just an overhyped promise of minority report level data extraction. Now, the purpose of Transact, which is Ephesoft's flagship product, is to support automated document conversion, categorization, and data extraction in order to accelerate your time to process information and to overcome expensive human errors. Transact uses a combination of supervised machine learning and rules-based logic in order to achieve incredibly high accuracy of extracted metadata with minimal samples required. We've seen a decrease in document-specific processing time by more than 80% for many of our customers, and we see an overall project setup time significantly shorter than most of our competitors. Moreover, as a company, this is our sole focus. It's intelligent capture. 10 years of experience in this very niche market has given us an edge over some of the new Me Too vendors that we see hitting the scenes just as recently as a couple of weeks ago. So let's take a quick look at what that internal application workflow looks like of a document flowing through Transact. Now, the first step in any document processing workflow is the point at which content is created or ingested by a system. And RPA platforms like UiPath have a ton of activities available for monitoring network locations, email inboxes, document management systems. That's something I'll show you when we get into the demonstration here shortly. Basically just looking for new content, which means that the first step of this particular processing workflow here is going to be an API call to the Transact server from UiPath. And this web services call is going to send the documents that are used in that workflow used by that bot from this server to Transact to run through a pre-configured project. From there, documents move to an image processing step where basic image enhancements are applied to the files and the document can be rendered text searchable through an embedded OCR engine. Or we can ingest the actual e-text layer if you already have text searchable documents that are used as a part of your bot. So we're not wasting unnecessary effort and time in actually doing that conversion. Then once the pages are assembled, we categorize the documents according to full content analysis. And unlike many of the traditional capture products that I've seen, Ephesoft uses unique classification algorithms that do not require the creation of rigid document templates for highly accurate categorization. We actually have an interface that simply allows you to drag and drop sample documents into a UI and let the application create that learning model behind the scenes based on the samples that you provide. Now, once the pages are sorted, we're going to use a combination of pre-configured rules-based logic and supervised machine learning to identify and extract key pieces of metadata. And then from there, documents may be held in a validation queue for human verification or remediation of those machine extracted index fields. They may be highlighted in that validation UI based on the confidence score, which basically is how the application determines certainty of correct information. So it basically assigns a score to each individual field, each individual document to determine the validity of that information extracted. And if validation isn't required, if the confidence score never falls below that threshold, an end user might not even have to even interact with or look at those documents. And then the final step of this internal application workflow is going to depend on the use case. In a standalone capacity, we might simply export the documents to where they need to be. Maybe it's something like a box or a separate content management system or a BPM tool. But in this particular case, what's going to happen, being used in conjunction with UiPath, is that there's going to be that web services API that sends the documents and the metadata or whatever information is called for from this particular bot back to the UiPath server, and that information is automatically going to be available for the rest of that robotic process once this batch is complete. So the Ephesoft Transact activities, we're talking a lot about UiPath here, are available for download in UiPath Go. And then once you download them, they're going to be found in the integrations tab of the activities window. And it's very simple to drag and drop an activity into the design studio to configure the task to send the documents to a specified Transact server. Depending on which activity you choose, there's a lot of different functionality involved. You can easily just start a batch of documents to be processed by a specific project. You can just return the extracted values. You can just return a document that's been split up. Maybe you have a mortgage document and you want to be able to split them up into individual pages to validate that each particular form has been filled out or each particular form is present in a package. Or maybe you want the documents and the metadata that's extracted. There's a ton of different unique activities that can be attributed to that bot. And these are basically just visual objects that are acting as wrappers around the Ephesoft web services that are available for developers that allow for that bi-directional communication between the RPA server and the capture server or the Transact server. So just a bit more information here on those web services that I mentioned, because these are key to the integration with any technology, whether it's RPA like UiPath or otherwise. The Transact Web Services API provides a very simple method for real-time integration and exposure of Transact processes to external applications. So this allows for developers to embed and employ Transact's advanced capture capabilities into external technologies, into content management systems with low-code implementation. This allows for agile implementation when you're looking at multiple applications, working in cohesion, working together, working toward that true integrated automation. Our web services do support the Open API standard, or OAS, which is formerly known as Swagger, and the Ephesoft Transact Web Services Explorer utilizes the Swagger interface to enable documentation and testing for those web services. So if anyone watching this webinar is interested in testing the specific web services that return XML responses, please send us a chat. I'd be happy to share that Swagger link with you so you can test directly within that interface. All right, without further ado, I would like to get into the show and tell portion of today's webinar. So in the example that I'm going to walk through, we're going to put on our tax hats, and to kick off the process, a fictitious gentleman named Dylan Carlisle is going to upload some tax forms to an online user portal of Ripon Tax Services. We have a UiPath bot monitoring that portal and waiting for new documents to be uploaded. UiPath is then going to send the documents to the Transact server to have the data automatically extracted and then returned to the bot in XML format. From that point, UiPath is going to send an email notification to the tax accountant with a brief overview of the document. Now, please note here, I am very aware that in a real world production example, the last step of this workflow is not going to be UiPath emailing clients' data, but this is the best example to show you how data extracted by Transact can be used downstream in a configured bot process. Also, we've put a couple of interactive message box pop-ups throughout the workflow to kind of slow everything down. Otherwise, from the point of me actually uploading a document to the portal to the point of getting that email at the end saying it's complete would take like 2 or 3 seconds. So I'd like to put in some steps to kind of show you the process along the way. So quick pause. Are there any questions before I move on? Anything I can address before I get into the demonstration? I don't think so. All right, so I am going to open up my server here. We've got a couple of things going on, if you recall that little overview I just put together. So to start, I have a simple K1 tax form from 2018 here for Dylan Carlisle. And what we're going to do is we want to upload this document into a portal. I have a UiPath bot running in the background right now. This is a process running for the workflow that I just outlined. And so I'm going to open up my Google Chrome browser. I'm going to take a look at my online portal here for tax documents. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my files. From here, what I'm going to do is I can see files that have already been uploaded in this particular tax portal. I'm going to add a new one here simply by adding file, and I'm going to browse to the document that I was just looking at, that K1 form from 2018, to open it up. Now, once this gets added, I'm going to click the send button. And as I mentioned, we have UiPath monitoring this portal to automatically ingest the document. And we can see here that's actually already happened. So a couple of things happened. I see a notice here saying UiPath received the tax doc, and it sent it to Ephesoft Transact to extract the data. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to move over to my batch instance management. It looks like I'm about to log out automatically. And what's going to happen here in the Transact batch instance management screen is that I'm going to see basically any batches of documents that are being processed in real time. If I open up my batch management screen again, I can see here that the batch for processing this particular document is in the queue, and I'm getting an update from UiPath as well saying that the data from Transact has been sent back to UiPath already, and then it's going to be sending me an email confirmation. So before I click on this OK button, I want to take a quick look at this screen, at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. What I'm looking at here just gives me a visual representation of the workflow internal to the application. So I walked through that a little bit in the presentation earlier, but this is a really great snapshot of showing me how a document flows through the different stages of the application. So we go from import to page processing to actually assembling the document to extracting the information from the document itself and then exporting it to where it needs to go. So I'm going to click OK. If I refresh this, it's going to show me that this batch is actually finished. And what I'm expecting to happen here is to have, I can see here the workflow has ended, and to receive an email notification letting me know that a document has arrived. So if I go ahead and open up my email here, in theory, I should be receiving an email any moment with some information specific to this. So while we're waiting for this email to actually show up, looks like I'm synchronizing my inbox currently. As soon as that happens, I will receive an email letting me know that the document has been processed. So while we're waiting for that to happen, something that I'd like to do is to actually open up Transact and take a quick look at the project that was defined to pull out this information. So if I go ahead and open up Batch Class Management, in Transact, what we call projects are batch classes. And so that is how we define how we want to actually capture information from the documents themselves. And as an administrator, I'm logged in to be able to see all of the different projects that have been configured. As a specific end user, we could limit access to who gets to see what based on department access rights, based on developer or bot access rights. So this is incredibly granular. But I'm going to go ahead and just open up this project that was configured. And if I open up this project, I'll see there was just one document type created. If you have more documents in any project, we could create as many document types as you need. And to actually train the system on how to view or interact or learn what this type of document is, all I have to do, and let me minimize some of these other windows here. All I have to do is select this document type, open up the sample document that I know represents that document. In this case here, I have a sample K1 file, and then I drag it and drop it into the upload learn files bucket. And like I mentioned with the supervised machine learning capabilities of this technology, what happened is that behind the scenes, the application is taking all of the text that exists on that page, whether it exists on the first page, whether it's finding a repetition words on the last page, the variable page lengths, the repetition of keywords, the relationship between keywords. And it's creating a model by which it's going to judge future documents that it finds on that particular document. So it's fairly intuitive to be able to interact with and understand how to start creating these document types. Now, if I open this document type here, I'm going to have another list of values. And this list of values represents the fields that we've defined for extraction in this particular document as well. So in this case here, I have, for example, a partnership name or the EIN. And if I open up one of these fields, what I have will be a list of rules that have been created to define what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a field type. So if I were to edit one of these fields, basically what's going to happen is I'm going to have a user interface where I have the ability to point and click at areas on the page to create rules. So in this case, I was looking for EIN, which means I have a key and a value, a red box and a green box to identify that information that I'm looking for. And in order to, in order to create these rules, all I have to do is point and click on the page. I can move these boxes around to define the relationship between those two variables that I'd like to extract information from. And it doesn't have to represent a specific zone on the page. This is just a helpful visual tool for me to make that relationship. So I could create a regular expression or define the pattern to say I'm looking for this type of information as the key. In this case, maybe it's the phrase fiduciary name or something similar to fiduciary name, and we can create some fuzziness there to that logic. And then from fiduciary name, I'm looking for the information that exists somewhere below it, and then I can define that pattern as well. I'm looking for 2 to 3 words with the first letter capitalized that exist purely of characters and no numerical information. And once I find that relationship anywhere on the page, I'll be able to return that value using the confidence scores that we've defined as the minimum for moving forward in the workflow. So it's not incredibly complex to be able to create these projects, and we can create as many or as few rules as we need for each individual document type and each individual field. So that's a pretty quick overview of how we create projects in Ephesoft Transact, how we process documents, how we interact with and work with an application like UiPath. So any questions, anything I can address at this point based on this technology? All right, so it looks like there was one question about UiPath working with Abby for OCR. So Hale, I can definitely do some follow-up with you. We have quite a few competitive advantages against a vendor like Abby. Specifically, I would say the ease of use from a user interface perspective and actually building the projects is designed to be low code, no code. And the point and click, drag and drop functionality is going to be, I believe, far superior. We also are licensed based on server core rather than page count, which allows for a little bit of flexibility in your document processing limitations. We also do not require templates to actually create projects. I know recently I was working with a client who had Abby recommended to them by someone, and the recommendation was to create an individual template for each one of their vendor invoices, which was thousands and thousands, which is not something that we would need. We'd be able to create a single invoice document type without having to create a unique template for each vendor. So those are going to be some of the big key differences there. Any other questions? Anything else about UiPath? All right, well, if there are no other questions, anything else I can address at this point, please feel free to reach out to me via email. I'm going to throw my email address up here. I'm more than happy to take direct questions, or visit ephesoft.com for additional information on our products and our platform in general. Thank you all so much for your time.